I'll declare the regular city council meeting for August 11, 2014 in session. The first order of business, even without a flag, it seems appropriate. Why don't we just stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next, adopt the agenda. Are there any changes to the agenda, Ed?
No, there are not.
Can I have a motion, please, to approve the agenda as presented?
I move that we approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We've approved the agenda. Next is the open forum. It's for citizens to address the council on subjects not on the current agenda. Does anyone wish to address the council?
Good afternoon, Tom Gregory, 1885 Steiger Lake Lane. I just want to talk a little bit about the 13.5 acres. I know it's on the agenda. I'm going to ask him if it was okay. He's got it okay. Just as reported in the Gazette, we didn't acquire that 13.5 acres until 2008. Shortly thereafter, we had 3 major proposals to develop that land. These were really expansive proposals. I mean, they included shops, restaurants, offices, professional buildings. Some had apartments, some had condos. I mean, these were really cool proposals. Three different developers, just in a matter of months. None of them came to fruition. We all know what happened later in 2008. The economy crumbled. Everything came to a screeching halt in the country, in Victoria as well. Here we are, 6 years later, we still have the land, it's empty. But ever since we've had that land, I've always felt that that is just a tremendous opportunity to reshape our downtown. It would be just a wonderful addition. I always thought we'd have more of a historical downtown, and that would be more of a modern downtown. But since then, we've had a lot of development in our downtown. But anyways, I think our downtown right now is really getting crowded. I think it's overcrowded. We have a grocery store that's been closed for 3 months, and that parking lot is literally full almost all the time. Our downtown is crowded. That 13.5 acres is still going to be a viable development. It should, its own central business district. It should stay central business district. Someday it will really be a wonderful addition to our downtown. Now I understand we've had several workshops entertaining the idea of selling that land for $900,000. Victoria residents have invested over $2.5 million in that property. $2.5 million. And we are talking about selling it and putting townhomes on there, selling it for $900,000. You want the taxpayers to take a hit of $1.6 million just to put townhomes on there? I've heard the argument that, well, we have to put townhomes someplace. The Met Council wants us to have high density. I think we could find 10 acres someplace to put 66 townhomes. That land, it may not get developed this year or next year, even maybe 5 years from now. I still think it needs to be preserved as an expansion for our downtown. Taxpayer dollars are too hard to come by. You cannot ask taxpayers to take a $1.6 million hit just to put townhomes on there, just to get rid of the property, just to get some cash back on our balance. Thank you.
I'd like to, if I could, just kind of respond or make a brief comment. No, you can,
Okay.
wherever you're comfortable. I think the general sentiment of this council, just for clarification, has not been to sell it just to get rid of it, and have been searching for the best use for it. And which is why the proposals to date haven't gone any further than they have. And I think the idea of townhouses has been rejected, or I shouldn't say rejected, it's met with resistance because it's not high enough density, not because we need a place to put townhouses, but because we had originally thought that would be its zone for even higher density than townhouses, and so it's a problem if we drop it back. It's not something that we can't overcome, but it is one of the considerations. So I think from the perspective of the council's interests, we do have to balance the realities of the current market. Are there 3 major developers lined up with those kinds of proposals today? We haven't seen them, but I think still the sentiments you've expressed are more in line with the direction or the conversation in the last couple workshops that we have held.
If I might interact, many cities have gone with retail down below and apartments, condos up above. I just think that would be just a wonderful fit for that area. I'd really like to see something, in that mix, along with offices and that type of thing. Shops and restaurants, we could do stuff like that.
Yeah, I think I would like that too, but we have to have, in addition to a willing seller, a willing buyer.
I agree, and like I said, it may not happen for a while.
It may
but I
not.
think that needs to be preserved. I really do.
Just from a transparency standpoint, Mr. Gregory, do you or your wife and or father own property around the 13 and a half acres?
We certainly do, and
I guess further.
that's it. But I mean,
And so
that's
let me ask
here
one
or
more
there.
question.
I realize that
It is
that's
here or
a
there. I mean,
but
you stand to gain or lose money
Oh.
based upon the property valuation of that sale.
yeah, you are correct. But I have been an advocate for lightening up the downtown for years. I have talked with Don, with Kara. I was trying to get us to build the city hall away from downtown. Shortly after we acquired the Hartman property, I wrote a letter to all you guys expressing my desire to build the city hall on that 10 acres on the tree farm. It wasn't to build it out on the 13.5 acres to spur development. To build it out there, if we built it out there, we would have room for expansion. We would have room for possibly a gathering space, which we lost by building it downtown. Again, we are overcrowded downtown. Ever since we put the shared parking ordinance in, it's a bad idea. It's been a bad idea from day one. Now we're overcrowded. We made the comment that, well, people are just going to have to get used to walking. Well, it gets kind of cold in Minnesota. And if you have to walk 2-3 blocks to get to the coffee shop, is that really the city that we need?
Well, I think I would say that I am in agreement. I won't speak for the council. I am in agreement with you that, yes, I would like to see downtown expand into the 13.5 acres, but I go back to my previous statement. We have to have both a willing seller and a willing buyer. And at this point in time, it doesn't appear that we do in terms of that vision for the property. Now, does that mean that we're going to go ahead and approve the proposal tonight? We'll have to wait and see.
I think what this conversation points out, Tom, is that there are a variety of uses that property could be put to. And I think you're going to find, when we get to the last item on the agenda tonight, is it's more important to me anyway that we have the right end product, that we have the right strategy in place. The money's interesting. The money's, of course, important, but the money's going to go into a bank account at some point, and we're 2 minutes later we're going to have forgotten what we got, what the price was. Whatever we build there is going to be there for a long, long time. So to me, it's more important that we isolate a strategy and then work toward that end. And I think it's fair to say, amongst the council, you could find between the 5 of us probably at least 3 different desired states. Well, we got to do some more work, candidly. But in the meantime, when somebody comes and says, we'll offer you X for your property, we owe it to the citizens to investigate, analyze, and then make a decision. At the point, so far, we made no decision to go anywhere near the price that
Right,
we're
but
talking
if the asking price is $2.9 million, and I thought that's the last I heard. I can't believe we're even entertaining offers of $900,000.
Well, we do. I mean, that's where we disagree.
Well, I would say that $2.5 million or whatever it is an unrealistic price just to begin with. Now, that doesn't mean I'm in favor of $700,000, but I think we have to look at the economy and what's happening, and I don't think we'll see that amount of money. So the approach that I'm taking is that first and foremost, I don't believe that the city should be in land speculation.
I agree.
And we have the land, we have it now, right? So now we have to figure out what we're going to do with it. So I guess I am in favor of trying to find an appropriate use for it. But we also have an obligation to the taxpayers that we have money tied up in an asset that's not being utilized. So we have to find a way to best utilize that for the city. If that means that we have to lose some money as from the original investment, that may be the case. But until we find a viable alternative, I can't tell you if I'm for it or against it.
I think this is the point we ought to maybe table this conversation and to the end of the last item on the agenda. Does anyone else wish to address? Okay. Ed, we have a visitor.
We have tonight with us Mark Metz, the Carver County Attorney. Mark is here to present the 2015 prosecution contract. City of Victoria contracts with Carver County for prosecution services, has been doing so for a number of years. And Mark will take us through the highlights of the contract and then ask us to consider approving it.
Mark, welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members. My name is Mark Metz. I'm the Carver County Attorney, and I've been the county attorney since 2010. And it has been a pleasure to serve the citizens of Carver County for almost the last 4 years, but also 10 of 11 cities in the capacity of our office serving as the contract prosecution. And as I mentioned, I gave a PowerPoint presentation, or at least the handouts, and I know there's limitations because of the change in the space, and so I think all the members have a printout of the PowerPoint presentation. But who do we serve? We serve, as I mentioned, 10 of 11 cities. All of the cities contract with our office, the County Attorney's Office, to prosecute misdemeanors and certain gross misdemeanors and other lower level offenses. The city of Chanhassen is the only city that doesn't contract with our office, and I don't know how long, maybe a decade, they've contracted with a private law firm that prosecutes for them. Mind you, we prosecute in the County Attorney's Office for all felonies that occur in Carver County. This is separate from that. So speeding tickets, DUIs, other lower level offenses besides felony crimes we prosecute for you. Just to highlight some value and services that I think that our office brings, and we drew this up because we're proud of the level of service that we provide. And one of the areas when I was elected as county attorney that I wanted to focus on was customer service, which kind of sounds strange as prosecutors in the county attorney's office, but really as citizens that commit offenses or violations, which probably we all have at some point, whether it's a speeding ticket or something other ordinance violation, something lower level. You get a ticket, you go to court, and our goal was really that you have a right to speak with a prosecutor there or speak with a student certified attorney to talk about your case and maybe explain it. And one of the areas that we had was we wanted to make sure that we balanced the level of offense and then people's records and make a determination that maybe certain people deserve breaks, maybe other people don't. So it's important that they have the opportunity to at least meet with a prosecutor, as I mentioned, on a Monday morning. That's usually when they have these cases, and talk about their case with them. And I'm proud to say that the judges that visit Carver County, because they do rotate at times if they're on vacation, have said that we are kind of the standard of these traffic cases on Monday mornings. It's very efficient, it's very effective, and so we have 2 law clerks and we have other attorneys that sit down, and we have a system, and it's paperless now as well. So it goes up on a computer screen. They have a call of 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you're on deck. And if you want to talk to one of us, one of the prosecutors about your case, we can do that. Other things that we provide is we do have full-time prosecutors, and so we don't do anything in this capacity except prosecute for the cities. And we have experienced attorneys and prosecutors that are on call 24 hours a day, that if one of our sheriff's deputies wants to call on a DUI arrest or wondering or other crimes that occur in the city of Victoria, they call this on-call number and they're going to get one of the prosecutors who's experienced to talk about it, whether it's should I get a warrant for this or I want to talk about strategy. And that's not unusual. At 12:30 on Friday or Saturday morning, they called on an issue, not for the city of Victoria, but another issue with somebody that was arrested on a sexual assault case. We appear for all of our bail hearings as well. We advocate for the conditions of release, public safety, and victim safety. And that's really important because if you're a victim of a crime, you know that we're going to have a prosecutor there advocating that they shouldn't have contact with this person or arguing that they should stay in jail for a certain period of time with bail conditions. We also provide a very focused and attentive victim witness services through our experienced full-time coordinator. And if you work with Nancy Yates, who's our full-time person, she's just superb and really worked here for over a decade in our office and interacts well with victims and knows what their rights are and makes sure that their experience is not worse than coming in there, because they're obviously nervous, and we walk them through that process. We're also centrally located in the courthouse. I think that's important because we can quickly go down to the courtrooms. We're also connected with social services and probation and the jail. And then finally, we train our law enforcement partners every year. We have 2 weeks of training that we work with our sheriff and go down and talk about different legal issues and hopefully educate them, and we learn as well from that. So the next chunk of the presentation is really about the money, and there's a breakdown of what it costs, but I'd like to focus on what do we do and how do we come up with the rates for the different cities. What we do is we decide that the fairest way is to come up with a 3-year average of the number of cases that we handle for each city, and that just gets a better, fair snapshot of what are the cases that we handle. So, for instance, in 2011, our office handled 195 cases for the city of Victoria, went down in 2012 to 152, and it's declined to 127 in 2013. So the average is 158. That comes out to be a little bit over 10% of the cases broken up with the 10 of 11 cities. So that's how we come up with a certain rate that's really hopefully equitably distributed amongst the different cities. So the fourth to last page of your handout, go down, third to last city, Victoria, just alphabetically done. The rate for 2014 was $8,644.32. So that's what the city of Victoria contracts with our office to prosecute the cases. And that will be reduced this year because of the caseload that has been reduced down to $8,005.49. So less $600 is a reduction. Now, next year if we do more cases, we average it out, it could increase. But we want to make sure it's affordable for you too. We recognize, I work with the board every single week, and tomorrow we have our board meeting, and so we're very sensitive to the cost of the cities, and we try to make it fair, and we want to make sure that we can provide that high level of service. And the second to last page just goes through with the fine revenue portion and the contract. So what I would ask is for a motion to approve the contract with our office, and then we can work with your city administrator with the actual contract and have that signed. And I'm open to any types of questions or comments. And like I said, thank you for contracting with and working with us and me as the county attorney.
Questions, council? Somebody want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion that we approve resolution number 14-62, a resolution approving the 2015 prosecution contract.
Second.
Any discussion? This is also part of the consent agenda. I just noticed.
Should we just do the consent agenda?
Well, we'll just do the consent agenda.
Sorry to confuse that.
No.
Yeah, we'll approve the consent agenda, in which all those items that are listed,
Unless anybody wishes to take anything out. There are a couple things I want to have taken out.
Well, for the record, I'll remove my motion.
So moved. On the consent agenda, I'd like to remove the minutes of the July 28th City Council meeting and the minutes of the Economic Development Authority meeting. With that, we have an amended, we have to ask approval for the amended consent agenda.
I move we approve the amended consent agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Mark, thank you. We've approved your
Thank you.
contract and we've all the payment request number 3 for the Lake Bridge Park improvements. The minutes. Remember at the meeting last week, or 2 weeks ago, I introduced the topic by saying this is the most confusing set of meetings and minutes that I can imagine. And when we got the minutes and I started going through them, I called Ed and we spent a fair amount of time today. There are significant modifications necessary before those minutes reflect what I think actually took place. Ed looked at the video and some of the stuff was pretty obvious to me, so we spent a lot of time. What I'd like to do is table the approval of the minutes of both of those sessions to the next city council meeting where we have a chance to present the amended minutes, and then you all have a chance at least to look at them. Because I could go through the changes that we'd suggest, and it would be more confusing than not. So my suggestion is we stop it. Ed gets a chance to rewrite it. In 2 weeks' time, we'll bring it back to the council. So I make a motion, we table the approval of the minutes of July 28th City Council meeting and the July 28th Economic Development Authority meeting until the next City Council meeting.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
We tabled the approval of the minutes. Payment of the bills, the consent, the claims roster.
I move we approve the August 11th, 2014 claims roster in the amount of $588,262.43.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
We've approved the claims roster. We have no donations, we have no public hearing, unfinished business. Ed, how do you want to handle these next items?
The city engineer has a report about the payment request made at City Hall Library. Carol?
Oh, same up here. So this specific agenda item, the next two, this one and the following one, deal with just the current monthly pay requests for the two buildings, and we are putting those on this part of the agenda versus consent, so we have an opportunity to provide the council with an update. One thing I do know that I owed you from last meeting was an update on the overall project costs. So I would put it up on the overhead here, but instead I made copies. Hopefully I have enough of them. So we go through this every probably 2 weeks. We're taking a look at all of the detail that go behind this summary sheet for where we are with numbers. So I wanted, overall, we're still sitting, we're now, as of 5 o'clock, $1,600 under the $5 million budget. But I wanted to just point out some items that are somewhat still less certain, I guess, than other items, just by way of update. So if you just go down the list there, there's a miscellaneous cost line item for furniture, equipment, technology, and moving. That's about a $500,000 number that we have in the estimate. We're still working on obtaining quotes for all of the work behind that $500,000 number. So Jessica's working on the furniture piece, Jenny's working on the low voltage and technology packages for the building, Anna's working on equipment for public works. So as they get more refined information, they're touching base with me on where they're at. Right now, there aren't any red flags that have been raised to expect that we'll go over on those items based on what we know today. And we do know a lot more today than we did even 2 months ago about those numbers. We have consultants helping us with the low voltage and with the furniture numbers. So we're getting closer on having resolution for that. That is probably the biggest kind of left number that's uncertainty. We're still carrying about $183,000 in contingency for things like change orders that are getting approved along the way. So generally, that was based on what our original estimate was.
Carol, where is that 183 reflected?
That is, the fourth line down, it says construction contingency. And originally, we were holding, our construction manager, Stahl, had recommended that we hold about 6% in contingency. So as we're approving change orders, I'm reducing the amount in that line item so that we're keeping track of it against an overall number. I did have, you'll notice there's a little asterisk after there because I did have to, the change order that's on the agenda officially tonight for all the costs to relocate the building was technically approved by the city council before we did the project, but finally we got all the paperwork in, so that technically was higher than 6% to begin with, but the math all adds up. So that's where we're sitting at today. We feel pretty good about our ability to come in underneath that number. Contingency-wise, things have been going pretty well. The Public Works project, they're going to be bringing forward a change order for kind of the last unforeseen underground circumstances. If you've been over to the site at all, there's a whole host of water pouring out of the side of the hill that's draining towards the site. So we approved, staff is going to be recommending approval of a curtain drain to be installed to pick up that water. Very common on all of our projects to encounter water as soon as we dig a hole in the ground with our clay soils. But generally things have been going pretty well from a lack of surprise perspective. So if you have any questions for me first on these budget numbers, maybe I'll answer those before I talk about the agenda item.
I'll ask a question here on the third from the bottom, fees, SAC building surcharge. Is there an offset somewhere since we're really, that's sewer access charge by the council, correct?
Yep.
So we're moving our current sewer access from one building to another building. We're not necessarily increasing. Is there an offset to that somewhere?
No,
Since
because it's just a
32,000?
whole new building. So you don't get credit back for demolishing your old building. Right?
So if I understand correctly, the purpose of this is to make sure we're paying for the capacity of sewer that we're using to the Met Council. And we're not changing that, but we're paying an additional $32,000 for that.
Yeah, we're at a new location for a new building, so they view it as new construction. If we were remodeling the existing building, then they would take a look at what the SAC fees were to date compared to the new construction. But yeah, I've never pondered that.
I don't even know what the SAC fee would have been for that building originally.
Especially
We're not-
Public Works,
yeah.
we don't,
There isn't much there anyway, in terms of the SAC. So I'd have to look back to see if there was a SAC determination made.
And I'm thinking about it independent of that. I'm thinking about it in terms of load placed on the utility, and that's not changing. But there's an additional $32,000 for additional load
It will
on
be
utility.
changing though. We're adding more units, showers, which we don't have, additional restroom, more water that we're using for washing truck equipment. So that's all going in that we don't have over here.
Okay. Thank you.
and we haven't gotten the official City Hall SAC determination yet. We just have the Public Works stuff back. So that number, the Public Works number is fixed. The City Hall number is still in process. So we don't technically need that yet. So it's one of the things we haven't gotten done.
Kara, how about the schedule?
Schedule-wise, we're still at the same place we were when we last reported either 2 weeks or a month ago. Our move-in schedule still is looking like between Christmas and New Year's, so no change there. Out of the gates, we were a few weeks behind, so they're looking to see if they can make that up. But we had a few weeks buffer from when our completion date was set at until our move-in date, in case we ended up behind a little bit. But in terms of City Hall then, there's a payment on the agenda for paying the contractor for this month's work. If you've been over there, the slab was poured for the first floor. And I didn't drive by there, but it sounded like the walls came in today too. And so they were going to be starting to erect the walls at City Hall. So that's the update on that one.
Any other questions?
Somebody like to make a motion to approve the payment?
I move that we authorize the payment in the amount of $123,903.57 for the contractors and $8,985.65 for Stahl Construction.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Paying Stahl. Carrie, you gonna do the Public Works?
I am. So that is the agenda item to pay the contractors for the public works facility for their work in July. There is an error I want to note on the agenda statement. If you look at my overall budget for building and site construction costs for public works, it says 1.258 million. Over here, I list the total contract amount as 1080937. That's because Stahl had an error in their spreadsheet, and we just copied their number over to our agenda items. So the total contract amount for this project that's been approved to date is actually 1.258. So we've been using that number, but I, after the fact, noticed that they had an error in their math. If you go to their pay application document, they just have a math error where the totals aren't adding up all the lines above it. So just wanted to make sure I noted that. Otherwise, in terms of process, Ann, do you want to progress? In terms of progress, do you want to comment on where they're at?
Sure. Good evening, Mayor and City Council. Actually, the Public Works building is coming along quite nicely. The steel, kind of the steel shell, actually both the east and west sides have now been completed. And concrete has been done. So they'll be starting to work on indoor type of things before the shell comes on. So FabCon, I just talked to FabCon this week, and they will be looking to deliver, I think, sometime in the next couple of weeks. So we are making some good progress with that. So, except for the water that we're experiencing on the site right now. It's a little issue, but.
Questions, comments? Somebody like to make a motion?
I move we authorize payment in the amount of $6,640.50 for the contractors and $20,114.15 for Stahl Construction.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We paid Stahl. Building relocation change order.
Yes, Mayor and Council, back in May 12th, the City Council approved and authorized staff to move the building back to its original location, back with Architectural Alliance. And at the time, we just had some rough ideas on costs, and now we have completed getting that documentation from the subcontractors and all the contractors on site. And the total is coming in at $105,296. So staff is requesting that change order be approved by the council.
And that is reflected in my overall budget sheet, so that's not new information overall.
Can you remind us what the original estimates were that we were working with when we made the approval to move it back?
I want to say it was about 100,000,
Yep.
roughly in there.
And you-
98,000 was the line item I had before.
That was the number in my head, so I was
Yep.
just double checking it. And then, can you remind us also how much we reduced the cost of that when we made the move downhill in the first place? I know there were other things that came into it, like concrete, curbs and gutters and things. My recollection was it was like 200. Does that seem correct?
Rings a bell, but.
Yeah, I can't say exactly either.
I'll make a motion that we approve change order number 1001R, thereby increasing the contract amount by $105,296. And that's agenda statement 14.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? We change order. leaving the subject of facilities for a moment. Ed?
Okay, we are at item for change order, or excuse me, under number 10, correct? Purchase of the fire truck.
Fire truck.
Yeah. The, not the fire truck, I should back up, it's a command vehicle. In the 2014 budget, there was a request into the budget for a command vehicle to service the fire department to increase their response times to fires so that when fire occurs or emergency occurs, that wherever that firefighter is, he can grab the vehicle and get to the response quicker than having to come to the station, collect it, and go. And Andrew Hager, our fire chief, is here to explain the request for the purchase. And as policy, the council has to approve these requests. And even though it was listed in the budget as under the CIP, it's still a part of the process that we have to have these items approved. So, Andrew, why don't you explain the actual request?
All right. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I guess I'll just back up and give a brief history on where this came from and how this all started. In 2004, I don't know if we can see it out here, that white pickup was donated to the city by the Hartman family. It's a 2001. We got it when it was 3 years old, about 40,000 miles on it. Currently, it has 108,000 miles on it, and it's slated for replacement in 2016, so we're hoping to take 15 years out of that vehicle. One of the biggest challenges with that vehicle is it's two-wheel drive, and in wintertime, it's horrible. So 2004, that became a fire department vehicle, and we utilized it as a response vehicle. Also in 2004, we were able to utilize Tim Walsh, the former fire chief, his county vehicle as a fire department response vehicle. So we had two vehicles at that point that would respond directly to incidents versus coming up here, help boost our response times, start the command process, those kind of things. In 2012, when Tim resigned, we lost the use of that county vehicle. So what I'm seeking is to purchase a second vehicle to get back to where we were, and looking at response times during the period when we had two vehicles, we were about 2 minutes less than what we're at today. Now, like I said, I know there's a ton of factors that play into response times, but that's one of the big ones. People are moving further away from the fire station and new developments, and it takes longer to get here. So we want to help boost that response time to give people the best service that we can, to get someone there right away to get our command process started, start evaluating the incident, and determine what it's going to take to stabilize that incident or resolve it. Some other things that we can look at is utilizing a vehicle like this for a duty officer program. We don't have the capability today through the county dispatch system, but it's something that's talked about, or it's coming in the near future, where we can send one person out in a vehicle like that for minor calls, power line down, carbon monoxide alarms, versus paging out 30 people in the middle of the night, getting them all out of bed, putting a big truck on the road, that kind of stuff. So that's a potential that's coming. I think adding this vehicle will help us develop future officers. Right now we have 6 officers on the department that have less than 5 years of experience. And it's nothing against those people, it's just how the department's made up and structured right now. So giving some of those people the opportunity to respond to these incidents and run a scene or run the command process will really help develop them. I guess how we respond to calls, it's changing quite a bit, and a big one that really jumps out where these vehicles come and really show how effective they can be is about a month ago, Chaska had and this made the news, Chaska had a creek incident, a water rescue in a creek, where a teenager went in the creek and was basically swept away in the floodwaters. And there's 3 fire chiefs that all have response vehicles responded directly to the scene and pulled that individual out. If that person had to wait another 6 minutes till a truck got there, it's hard to say, what the outcome could have been. So that's really kind of why we're seeking this purchase. The details of the purchase are in the packet. We'd be going with basically the police version of the Ford Explorer off the state contract. So it's a all-wheel drive vehicle. It's built more for heavy-duty operations, stuff like that. I mean, it's not a typical Explorer you go buy off the lot. So that price is off the state contract, and then the bid for the lighting and outfitting is all included in there. So, any questions for me?
Who wants to start? Joe?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Andrew, what goes into do we have to buy extra equipment now to put into this vehicle? I mean, obviously the guy's just not gonna show up with a notepad and pencil.
They would carry their gear with them. The biggest expense I would say we'd have to buy right now is just another iPad, which we use for all of our mapping and stuff like that. The medical equipment we all have, or we can restructure what we currently have to outfit this thing. So that's something we would outfit with those medical equipment to respond to those.
So this, if we buy the vehicle, it's after we get it, we're operational and we don't have any other.
Yep.
So all of the list of all the material that's included in the packet here is what's needed to make this unit operational.
Correct.
Plus an iPad.
Yeah, and I think I included that price in there, so.
Andrew, remind us, you said we currently have one vehicle,
Just one, yep.
2001,
Correct.
front wheel, rear wheel drive.
Rear wheel.
If you're successful in getting a approval to buy this one, the 2001 vehicle is gonna be replaced, you said, in 3 years?
2016 it's currently slated for at a 15-year life, so.
2 more years, so you'll be
Yep.
back in 2 more years. I mean, what's the right number of these vehicles to have? More is better than less, I'm sure, but
I don't know if there's a magic number. I mean, if we compare, I hate comparing to other cities because everybody's so different on how they do it. The city of Chaska has 4 of these vehicles. The city of Chan is either at 4 or 5. I'd be happy with 2. I don't think we need 3. So everybody's all over the board on how they do this. So.
but there isn't anybody with one?
City of Waconia right now is 1. I believe the city of Watertown is 2. So.
Would acquiring this vehicle now allow you to delay the replacement of, that became the primary command vehicle, allow a delay of replacement of that one?
It's hard to say. I would prefer not to. I think if we push that vehicle out any longer, it's going to get to the point where maintenance-wise, it's really going to start costing us more than it's worth. So.
Joe?
One more question. So just explain the process so this goes home with somebody at night, it sits in their driveway, they go out on call, can they take this to go get groceries, or will we see this vehicle in, Eden Prairie one day, or how does that work?
Right now, we basically allow it for use within the city. So if they're going to respond, if they're running up to when we had the grocery store, but when they're going to run up to get groceries, we'd allow that because they might respond, but they're not going to be driving to Eden Prairie with it to go to the mall or anything like that. So basically, if they're available to respond here, we allow the use of it. So.
But if they're on the road, you want them in that vehicle, somebody senior in that vehicle in case the call comes in.
Yep.
Do we have anything programmed? Can't recall in the 2015 CIP? No.
This is a 24.
This is 20.
No, I said, do we have anything in the 2015 CIP major for the fire department?
No.
No. And when's the next fire engine scheduled? 2018?
Well, we pulled that at this time, so we're going to reevaluate that. So right now we don't have any major fire apparatus replacements in the next. I'll say there's nothing in the next 5 years for sure.
So at one point in time, and I think we still are to a lesser degree, putting a reserve, putting money aside every calendar year for capital improvement. How much money is in that account today?
I believe the last I saw, Kelly might be able to. I think the last I saw was about 404,000.
Would this then be funded out of that account?
Yep. And that account basically is flat right now. The money that would normally go to that account is being used for the lease payment on the new fire engine that we purchased in 2012.
And will that consume the entire 400,000 then?
Nope,
No,
so,
you're not touching it.
yeah, the 404,000 doesn't go down, or doesn't go up, it will go down with expenditures if we approve this.
But we'll
It's
still
just
have
not gonna
enough-
grow right now.
But we'll still have enough to pay for the fire engine and this from that account?
Yeah, because the $70,000 a year that would go towards that fund is basically just picking up the lease payment.
I understand, thank you.
Looking at.
Every time.
Mr. Mayor, I want to add one other thing. You may see that vehicle in another city, but only on another call. They have a mutual aid call or something.
Fair.
So the other topic that we've been talking about from the fire department standpoint is the possibility of adding a full-time chief. How does that play into this, Andrew? So do we have to buy
I guess-
another car for the chief if that chief comes?
Yeah, that was my discussion with Ed also today, is if that's something that we look at going in the future, that this would, I can't speak for how we would structure it, but most cities supply their full-time chief with a take-home vehicle, so this would be, could fill that role also.
But would we need another vehicle then, so taking us to 3?
I don't think so, no. I would say we would provide that person with one, and then keep the second one on a rotating basis within the other members of the department, so.
I'll make a motion to purchase a second command vehicle with accessories from the state bid totaling $40,111.38.
Second.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Go buy a
Thank you.
vehicle. Potential sale of the 13.5 acres.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, in your packet, you received a letter of intent from Ronald E. Clark, Ron Clark Construction and Design. They are the company that Richard Palmer has been talking to. Richard has been our broker on the parcel from CBRE. And it's my understanding that the city, I'm going to go back, a lot of you know this already, I'm the new person on the block, so bear with me, but it's my understanding that the city has owned the property since 2003, but actually took official ownership of it in 2008. And we have been considering selling the property since that time. A few ideas have been looked at, including a mixed-use development with retail and housing, some townhomes, senior living, etc. Back in the 07-08 timeframe, the city engaged the services of Hoisington Kogler Group, HKGI, to prepare a downtown master plan. And they had some concepts that were looked at, but no final determination was made as to the ultimate land use. It appears that uses of retail and housing were proposed within the downtown master plan that would meet the requirements of the zoning code and further promote the extension of the downtown area. So upon engaging the services of Mr. Palmer back in November of last year, he began marketing the site as West Side Village and indicated that as a part of the marketing literature that the property was zoned Central Business District and guided for downtown commercial. Since his involvement, he has indicated that there have not been any interested developers regarding a mixed-use development. A couple of the major concerns is access from County Road 11 and Trunk Highway 5, because both the county and the state have indicated at some point to somebody that a right-in, right-out would only be allowed. And if you look at that, and if that were the case, I could understand why the retailer wouldn't want to do a development there. I don't know if that's been verified, so we have to look at that. But anyway, CBRE has been working with other developers and has talked to Ron Clark Construction and also Kerber Homes. And back in June, the city received a letter of intent from Kerber Homes and a letter of interest from Ron Clark. And the proposal from Ron Clark was a mixture of twin homes and townhomes. And Kerber had given us a letter of intent to build townhomes, but it would depend on a market study that was underway by Maxfield Research, which I understand is just about completed through the county. They're talking about, I think, the end of this week. So prior to the July 14th council workshop, Ron Clark Construction and Design had proposed a 66 units of twin homes and townhomes, and this is what Mr. Gregory was referring to earlier. And the proposal was to purchase the land to accommodate that, and it was discussed at the council, and what happened there was he went back and came back with another proposal that talks about doing a lesser number of townhomes and some senior housing, and the lesser number of townhomes is at 44, and the number was at 700,000 with the option to purchase additional land, or the additional land to accommodate multifamily of approximately 70 units within 2 years of the project closing on the original development. So that would be 560,000. So that would put you over $1 million in terms of the sale. There's no guarantee in that option, however. It's really the letter of intent refers to the 44 townhomes, and the additional is kind of a wait and see. I interpret it to be that way anyway. So he believes, Mr. Palmer believes that the proposal is viable and would place an attractive development on the site. He's also had some discussions with the CDA about building a senior housing development, and they would be interested in looking at that. They could be the partner with Mr. Clark, or some other developer could be the partner, or Mr. Clark would be the developer. We go through and follow through on his option. So I'll try to summarize the issues that are the factors that I see as critical here are access issues to the site. And I think we need to have more discussion with Carver County and MnDOT about that. Do we have sufficient multifamily housing in Victoria? Is there a demand for townhomes and or twin homes? What market studies have been done or need to be done to determine if there is sufficient housing? And how does this type of land use affect the city's current comprehensive plan? Another factor is, do we need additional assisted living and memory care facilities, and have there been any market studies done on that topic? Has the Victoria Business Association been given adequate opportunity to provide input regarding the type of land use they would like to see for the property? And what retail or other commercial services are needed in Victoria that could potentially be placed on the site? Has the Planning Commission been given the opportunity to weigh in and give their input? And finally, what does the community think about the potential land uses? Have we surveyed the community? What do they see as the critical needs in the community? So, big question I have is, have all the land use alternatives been identified and developed or explored? And this is a prime piece of real estate. It's overlooking a nice lake and the Carver Park Reserve. I think we need to be very cautious about what we want to see. I think because it's in the city's hands, we own it. My opinion, we should look at it in terms of what's the highest and best use for that site that's going to meet the needs of the community in the long term. Whatever you locate there is going to be there for a long time, so you want to make sure that it's the right thing for the community. Be my recommendation at this point in time to have you review the letter from Mr. Clark, and then consider delaying any action until those factors which I described would be vetted a little bit more, and we'd have a plan to come back and how we want to approach those factors and addressing those questions.
Council? I'll kick off. We bought the property, it's sat there, we hired a broker to sell it. For the better part of 4 to 6 years, you could hear crickets chirping. I mean, there was just absolutely no interest, predictably, at least no interest that was expressed to us, somewhat predictably because of the market conditions and the economy. In the last year, the activity level seems to have been picked up as the economy has picked up, and we've had some more relatively serious nibbles at people who are interested for a variety of uses. But it strikes me that we're still at a point where we're playing defense. An offer comes in, an idea comes in, and we scramble and we analyze it, we spend time in.
as opposed to, given the level of, the importance of that property and the upturn in the economy, I suggest it's time for us to go on the offensive and actually go through some of the points that Ed mentioned. What do we want on the site as opposed to waiting for an offer to come in? I think I guess we could always vote if there's interest in just selling it to the highest bidder and getting rid of it. That could be one option. I think as Ed said, though, whatever gets built there is going to be there a long time. And I, for one, would like to make sure that some studied thought goes into whatever ends up there. Senior housing, twin homes, mixed-use retail. We're not in a position yet, I think, to even have an intelligent conversation, because right turn in and out, yeah, both. What's the future of Steger Lake Lane? The utilities situation. There's a whole lot of unknown, at least to me, unknown questions that I'd like to have answered before I'd feel comfortable saying, yeah, we should entertain an offer from Mr. Clark, or we should entertain an offer from Kerber, the CDA. To my knowledge, we currently don't have any interest expressed from a commercial developer, but that could change too. And it could change if we decide that's what we want, when we go out and be a little more aggressive, as opposed to just, again, I hate being on the defensive where we're just being passive, or we're just waiting for the next offer to come across the table. So that's my shot. Anybody want to?
Sure.
Jim?
Yes, I agree with you, Mr. Mayor. We've been on the defensive, continue to be on the defensive. I am concerned, however, reverse it, to go on the offensive. Kind of like a home developer, you have to put in some spec homes to set the vision, to get people to understand what it could be and get people to buy into it. And for us to take that on means we get more into the land speculation business. And we actually have to invest money in the property and set a direction as to what we want that to be, with the risk that nobody will come. And I guess that's my biggest concern. I share the thoughts Mr. Gregory expressed earlier. I would love to have seen City Hall on that property, but it meant increasing the budget by $2 million. That's very expensive, and it also set the precedent as to what would be there and the risk that nobody would come. So that's, going back to the decisions of why we put City Hall where it is. With respect to this offer, at this point I'm not in favor of it. I like what our city manager suggested, that there are too many unknowns at this point, that we need to investigate a little bit further. I think the access from the two adjacent roads right now is a major concern for any commercial. At least everybody that we've spoken to has expressed that as a concern. That has to be understood, whether or not that can be rectified before I can make a decision to go one way or another.
Yes, thank you. I would agree that we need to do some examination here. We actually have a couple of questions we need to answer besides these. There is a revision in the comp plan that's due, I believe, this coming year, and that should go hand in hand with this discussion and evaluation of what we're trying to do. We also do not have a very clear vision for downtown as a current council and or council to come in the coming year as well, and something that we really need to take a look at. I don't think there's been a comprehensive plan looking at even just the downtown since the noted date here of 2008 with HKGI. So again, with the state of change in the economy and everything else, and our city, because we're supposed to be double about what we were going to be about this time frame, it's a good time to relook at that if we're going to try to answer these questions. I think community involvement is important. I also question sort of a little bit in terms of market studies and those kinds of items. I think as a council in the past, we haven't actually been involved in it, but in the past councils, I don't know if we have actually invested money and time into both that, into market studies and any of those items. So again, that will be something that will need to be considered in terms of, Jim, I think you sort of said some investment into setting that vision and what that looks like. Market studies
Yeah,
potentially might be part of that.
It might be. I was more concerned of having to go put in streets and utilities to actually set that up.
Set that up,
Yeah.
sure. So we have a number of questions beyond these even that I think need to be enveloped into that and kind of looked at as a whole package. We had talked about at one point also getting evaluation of the land itself anyways, but agreed upon the factor that we didn't know what we wanted to do with that land to direct, and I don't think valuation is the right word, I apologize, but to direct a appraiser to look at appraisal for the land and to look at that. So again, work to be done even before we ask for that appraisal. This falls in line with this process. And so I do think we need to take the time to have those conversations, look at that, and have a more planful, thoughtful, if defensive is the right word, offensive, approach to this, but at least have a view as to where we're headed.
The risk of going last, of course, is you start to sound redundant, but I don't feel any urgency to sell here. We have an asset, it's an important one, and to do anything hastily, I think, does a huge disservice to the city. And even just using the term "the city" kind of forgets the fact that the people who live here are the ones who paid for it. It's not the city, it's us. We bought it, we paid for it, we own it. We need to make sure that the end use of it, since we ended up owning something we shouldn't have, but we have it now, so we need to make sure that it delivers the best possible result to the residents of the city. I think, we may not have a development proposal on the table today that meets that West End Village vision, but as our rooftops grow, so will developer interest. That's the thing we hear repeatedly as we talk about what kind of businesses want to locate in the city and when we get big enough, when we reach a certain size and a critical mass. And so to rush something now, I think, could potentially just miss that opportunity. So, again, to kind of echo the business association, the citizens, and the planning commission really, all need to have the voice in deciding or helping guide where this goes. Planning commission work was done in 2008 or somewhere in that time frame. Is that still the way it's zoned today? Is that still the right zoning? Would we do it differently? And again, that's the comprehensive plan. So I think that needs some time to unfold. It's an important opportunity, and once it's gone, it's gone. We're not going to get it back. So again, I'm not in favor of moving hastily just to cash a check. And lastly is when we talked about the City Hall location, I think there was kind of discussion about whether that really belonged on that 13.5 acres, and I think there was a lot of support for that, but again, no money in the bank to take on the additional $1 to $2 million of building infrastructure to kind of drive our stake in the ground there first. But I think we also looked at where we are today and said, when the time is right, that building could be sold as a commercial building, and we could move on to that 13.5 acres if that is the final right place for City Hall. So again, I think we're in a good position. We've got a lot of the right things happening, and I don't feel like rushing that would serve us.
Joe? I think the good thing about it is that by us holding it, it doesn't cost us any money. We don't pay taxes. It's just sitting there waiting for us to decide what to do. And I guess I agree with pretty much what everybody's been saying. I'm definitely not in favor of, like Jim had talked about, building roads or infrastructure to try and entice somebody to come in and do it. I think just let the market and the visionaries dream it up and bring it to us, and we need to decide what we actually want to see there. We need to go through a robust process of trying to identify what we want to see there, and then in conjunction with what I think would be wise as an appraisal to say, okay, if you do this, it could be worth X. And so then when proposals come in with us, we can say, yeah, this makes sense and this is a good deal for taxpayers.
I think a couple items that just came to mind. One is a concern that I have is we need to address this with a sense of urgency. It's been sitting there for a long time, and in my mind, having that asset sitting idle, we are losing money. It's a lost opportunity, and so there is a revenue component to that. Letting it sit there indefinitely, I don't think is acceptable. Again, we are losing money by not utilizing that land now. So it's important to address this with a sense of urgency to try to find a use for it. I'm also mindful of a comment that I heard from a gentleman who is a professional or was a professional in the land development business, gentleman sitting right here, about always waiting for the best offer and you're never getting it. And so we have to approach this, I think, again, in summary, with a sense of urgency, being mindful that there probably isn't a perfect use or a perfect buyer for it. We need to find the best use for the property that we can find at this time. And that doesn't sound quite right, but if you get what I mean. Thank you.
Well, there are enough smart people in this city, present company excluded perhaps, but Planning Commission hasn't had a chance to look at it. This group hasn't been canvassed. The citizens, we haven't asked, what do the citizens want to see there? I think it's time we take a more, I said offensive, I guess maybe the better word would be a more active approach to this. And echoing, I think, Jim, what you're saying, I'd like to see some urgency. Urgency not necessarily in dumping the property or dumping the property, not in that sense, but in determining to the best of our ability with all the relevant inputs from the technical people, from the marketing people, from the construction people, what's the best use of that site? Ultimately, is it a residential site? Ultimately, is it a senior site? Is it a mixed-use site? What ultimately do we want there? And then once we get comfortable with the various constituencies having a chance to input, then we go aggressively and market it. But to sit back and wait for Ron Clark to come, who, by the way, is a class act. If we were to anything he would build, we'd be proud to have him in our city. Maybe not on this site, and maybe not yet, but until we have a chance to investigate. I guess I'd like to suggest that. Well, let me just throw it out. Back to Richard, to Ron Clark. Thank you for your offer. We're not interested at this time. We've got work to do, and on a separate path, come back to us with a suggested game plan involving consultants and/or constituencies and/or canvassing the residents, and let's us spend some time between now and the end of the year, given all the other things going on, trying to come up with what do we want to have on that site.
Mayor, one comment about, I've heard it the couple of times I've been at meetings where this topic has come up. I've heard folks talking about the city not having any carrying costs for the land because you don't pay taxes on it, of course, and that's right. Just one comment about that. Given the way that the city acquired that property in 2008, my understanding is that the statute, of course statutes can change, but the statute exempts that property from the city paying taxes for 15 years from acquisition, so there is an end date. It's not anytime soon, but there is an end date where that property would become taxable again.
Is it as of 2008 or 2003?
My understanding, and I think you'd have to get title work done to understand the way, because it was a little bit of a complicated transaction by which the city acquired the property, but my understanding is the trigger date would be 2008, and that it's a 15-year period.
And I throw out a strawman approach. I'd be curious if people.
Well, we've approached this in the past with having the city manager go to a broker and letting the broker go. And what I'm hearing is we need to turn that around and put our thoughts to paper and direct the broker to go seek this type of buyer.
We need to come up with a plan.
Yeah.
Do we want to have a survey of the community? Yes or no?
Yeah.
If yes, as a whole game plan. Do we want to talk to commercial developers about their interest in the property, what they would see? Probably yes. Do we want to do demographic studies? I mean, population, does this city have is there a realistic market? And is that the spot for a senior center, for senior housing? Or is it residential, or is it commercial? All these questions, really, we need some expert input. The right turn only issue, a pretty significant issue. How Steger Lane gets routed or rerouted. What happened? What do we do with access to Route 11? There's a whole host of pretty serious questions before we entertain any, come up with a game plan as to what we prefer to do on that site, I think. I mean, Ed, you've been down this road.
Well, I think what you're saying is exactly what I suggested, is we have to, find out more. We have to do more due diligence. We have to find out what our advantages, what we can do with the property, what's going to really make it work, for the community as a whole. And it's going to take some analysis by staff and consultants to come up with that. Come up with an answer.
Is there a way to tie that into some of the work around the comprehensive plan? Because I would hate for us to do a separate piece altogether and then come back and do comprehensive plan.
Yeah.
I'd rather see this tied together so that we, again, have a better view and we're answering some of the questions around density and other components at the same time. Because we've been losing, again, in some of our approvals of potential plats and looking and reviewing that, we've been losing density. So again, I'd rather look at the whole picture, not just the 13 and a half acres in this process.
Yeah, congratulations. Here's our plan, but we can't build it.
Well, the comprehensive plan is updated, is done every 10 years. So our next one is due in 2018, which is 4 years ago.
Is it 018? I
Yeah.
thought Holly said we were due for a revision.
We would have to do an amendment if we were gonna change these properties that we've been talking about, then we would have to go.
So we would have to do that anyways if we decide
To change from the plan.
Okay.
But the point Lonnie's trying to get, a significant point is the Met Council has a role in this. Whatever we would choose to do, we want to take their pulse at least.
It seems that one of the important factors, both in what kind of use we can attract and the value of the land, has to do with access. What's the process, or what's our ability to gain access or get some, approval from MnDOT to provide a more direct access into that land from Highway 5?
What I spoke with the city manager about is we haven't had a direct conversation currently with them about access to the site. So it certainly does not hurt to sit down with the current area manager and revisit the discussion based on what's out there today and what we know today and what we're hearing from commercial developers, to talk with both them and the county.
So you'll probably never hear me suggest this again, but is this where we partner with the Met Council to get some pressure on MnDOT to help us achieve the density that they'd like to see there?
Certainly doesn't hurt to involve our area rep in those discussions.
Well, is everybody, I kind of laid out a general plan. Task Ed to come back in a future council meeting relatively soon, given all the other priorities, with a game plan, a straw man game plan on how we're going to approach this. Anybody else have anything else to offer?
Makes sense.
Thank you.
Were we gonna, I had thought at some point that we had talked about sending a survey of some sort. I don't know if that was in relation to when next council comes on, we're gonna do a strategic planning. We wanted to have a survey and input from all the residents.
Right.
Is that a place where we could ask, what do you want to see here? Or
Oh, yeah.
what is important to us so that we can incorporate those? Because I guess, my one thought on what it means if 70% of the residents want to see something other than what I think, it's not even worth us talking about what I want. So
And the only danger is, and it's always a danger, if 70% of the residents want something that this group professionally, and along with the planning commission and/or the planning commission thinks is not practical, we have to deal with it. But certainly to solicit that input, and I said earlier, there are a lot of smart people in this city, a lot of talent, and I think if we'd offer up this as one component of a broader survey, because we had talked about doing a survey of the either telephone or mail. I mean, again, one of the points you want to investigate and come back to us with a recommendation as to how expansive would the survey be, but certainly include a component for the 13-acre site, I would think.
We'll take it even more than a survey, much like we did with the Public Works Facility in City Hall, having an open house.
For a series of.
Series of discussions.
So when do we send out mailings, or when does our residents, when do we get different things that we can piggyback on those mailings? Like I'm thinking
Utility bills.
Quarterly?
Water
utility
bills.
or-
Quarterly?
And it doesn't even have to be, I mean, it could be its own program.
You know, is there, with our new kind of enhanced functionality of our website, is there an opportunity to put a Dropbox for citizen comment and input?
There already is.
Yep.
Actually, just put up a form.
Well,
Of these uses,
and I'm
what do you
thinking more
think?
specifically a focus one that
Yeah.
addresses this, and then, you know, the public open house is a great idea as long as we capture important information. It's not as useful if we have a room full of people looking at drawings and pictures, and then they leave and don't leave behind their input.
Do you feel comfortable with the direction we're?
I think so, and it'll be a matter of just developing the different components to go with the direction we're talking about, so.
Yeah, I mean, I would suggest, think of it as a straw man you bring back to the council.
Yeah,
We-
I'm hearing, tell Mr. Palmer thanks, but we're not interested at this time. We'll move forward with the information we talked about tonight. There are, the phone survey is usually what those do, the professional services that are out there. They'll call a random sample, maybe 400 calls. Those are what you're gonna get from those, even though there may not be the largest number, is you're gonna get someone to respond. When you do a paper survey, they don't really work. Survey Monkey, I'm not sure how,
We've used that before.
how effective that is.
But I think-
we'll figure out some method that we should collect without spending a lot
A
of money.
means to.
But I think there's pre-work that has to be done before we go to that
Right.
step, and the pre-work is,
Yeah.
there are, it's not an infinite number of possibilities, there are 5, I'm gonna pick a number. It's residential, it's commercial, it's mixed, it's, what are those options? That's the pre-work that needs to be done to be presented, that, what do you prefer?
You don't want to take a blank sheet of paper to the community.
I think spin your wheels, whatever.
Yeah.
Okay,
Thank you.
everybody
Do we
comfortable?
need to make a motion or anything on this, or?
Consensus is to move forward, or you want to,
Well, I'm just,
create a
what,
motion?
procedurally, what we need to do to be
Are
Are we
correct
actually
on
more
this?
Direct
regarding
you
the letter of
to-
intent?
Mayor and Council, given the relative complexity of what you've directed your staff to start digging into, I think making a motion on that would be very difficult. So I think it's a consensus that staff is to move forward with some of the ideas that you've talked about here tonight and come back to you. That come back to you time is probably the point at which you start to narrow down and actually make a motion, I think, so.
Thank you.
at
How
this
about
point,
getting
we're
back
good.
to Richard Palmetier?
That I think you could make a motion on, yes, that's quite specific.
Somebody want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to respond to the letter of intent with a polite decline to move forward with it at this time.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So be it. Good discussion. Reports of the mayor, city council members, the attorney, and the committees. I have, the last sheet in our packet is a flyer for Volksfest. It starts this Friday. An awful lot of people have done an awful lot of work to make this event a success, so I encourage all of us to talk it up and participate as much as we can. Council members have any reports?
Mayor, may I interject before I apologize? I think this is also attorney, and I just don't want you to get too far off of your agenda. I think staff has discovered a math error in one of the items that you've already acted on. It is item 9B, And so I think what we'd like to see you do is make a motion to reconsider. Now typically, only the prevailing side can make a motion to reconsider. That was a unanimous vote, so anyone could make the motion to reconsider that, and then I think the engineer or finance would explain to you what that math error was.
Somebody want to make a motion to reconsider item 9B?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Let's reconsider motion, item 9B.
So if you go to item 9B in your packet, and these, what was approved in the claims roster is actually correct, but on the bottom of the agenda item where it says authorized payment in the amount, and there's two amounts listed, they're in conflict with the two amounts listed above. If I had an overtime, I'm gonna walk up there.
Page 57, if you're looking for it, I have.
It's the Public Works, it's the Public Works facility.
Yeah, so these two numbers down under the staff recommendation were from the last council meeting. It's actually these two numbers up on top, so
What are the correct numbers?
$50,531.68, and then $9,716.09. And they were correct in the claims roster, which you approved, but incorrect.
So we've
So try to
approved,
apologize.
we've approved the wrong number.
Yeah.
Now, would someone like to make a motion to approve the correct number?
I move we approve a correct number. The correct numbers are $50,531.68 to be paid to Stahl Construction and $9,716.09 to be paid to contractors.
Technically the other way around. The contractors get 50,000 installed.
Oh.
$50,531.68 to be paid to the contractors, $9,716.09 to be paid to
Oh, then
Stahl.
our statement below was really off, okay.
Second.
Any further discussion? It's going to be hard to get contractors to work for us if we can't figure it
Okay.
out.
The
That's
checks
which
were
way we
cut.
make
Yeah.
mistakes.
So,
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
sorry about that. Thank you.
That's your one mistake for the year,
Back on
Karen.
reports.
Reports.
Just two things of note. We have two businesses opening this week in downtown Victoria. We have The Social, an ice cream shop owned by Brandon and Ashley Wallace, I was trying to remember her name, that owns School of the Wise. And then we have Churchill's Fine Cigars and Gifts, Cigars and Fine Gifts, owned by Derek Smeagol. Both of them opening, I believe. Cigar shop is opening on Wednesday, and the ice cream shop is opening later this week.
Yeah, he's going to be ready for process.
That's great.
Anybody else? Bob, do you have any?
No, Mayor, thank you.
Hearing none, we'll take a motion to close.
Close. Move adjourned.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Adjourned.